Coming up on this week's episode of the EV Resource Podcast, Tesla becomes the biggest automaker in the world. Mercedes-Benz revealed the first photo of their EQS sedan. CATL develops a million-mile battery, and more. Hello, friends, and welcome to the EV Resource Podcast. I'm Zach Hurst, and each week I bring you the latest EV news, information, and answer your questions about electric vehicles. Special thanks to Titan Auto and Tire for their support for this podcast. Titan is one of the very few independent shops in Virginia that are qualified to work on EVs, and from hybrids to Hummers, they fix everything. Now, if you are one of those that watch the YouTube video, you will notice that this week there is no video, and that is entirely because my computer is old and can't handle it anymore. I have ordered a new computer, it just hasn't arrived yet, so bear with me this week. There is not going to be any video associated with this podcast. I am, of course, going to get back to having the full video next week. So first in the news this week, we'll talk about Tesla. They have hit yet again another major milestone. Earlier in the week, their stock price went well past $1,000 per share, making them the most valuable automaker in the world, the biggest by market cap, surpassing Toyota. Now, that was a brief victory. As of the time of recording this, they have dropped back to number 2. Their current market capitalization as of 8 o'clock Saturday morning is $173.47 billion to Toyota's $183.39. Now, I am not a huge stock person, so don't expect any advice or anything in terms of buying or selling or any of that from me. But one thing I do know about Tesla's stock is that it is extremely volatile. If you do own Tesla stock, then you're used to going for a wild ride. And honestly, I would expect that this will go back up again and then probably drop after that. So it's not necessarily surprising to see that Tesla dropped back below that top spot, but I think it's important to recognize the fact that they did this at all. You're talking about a company that has only been in existence for less than 2 decades, taking on the rest of the world. I mean, you could look at Tesla's market capitalization, and they are worth more than Volkswagen, Honda, and Daimler, the next spots, 3, 4, and 5, combined. And to look at it another way, if you can look at the top 3 U.S. auto manufacturers, the big 3 of Fiat, Chrysler, General Motors, and Ford, and Tesla is worth more than double those 3 combined. I think that is huge, and it really speaks to the power of electric vehicles and where the world is headed with this technology. I've said it before on this podcast that Tesla is bigger than themselves. They are a representation of the entire electric vehicle industry of what's possible because they are the first ones that are going out there and building EVs profitably, showing the traditional automakers that yes, it can be done and it can be done well. So I tend to want to be somewhat brand agnostic on this podcast, and generally in life I am, but you cannot ignore what Tesla is doing and what they have done before. Now, if you're interested in following the value of the top 25 automakers by market capitalization, I actually found a spreadsheet that has been made by a user called Brandude87. His name's Brandon, and he does have a Tesla because he has the Tesla promo code in there that you can use when you're ordering one. But it is really, really helpful to take a look at the data. It's up to date, it stays organized. So I'm going to put a link to that spreadsheet in the show notes so that you all can take a look at it for yourselves. Last year, Mercedes-Benz unveiled their electric vehicle plans with the EQ lineup of vehicles. Their first one, the EQC, was their EV SUV, but they are expected to have an all-electric EQ version of nearly every vehicle segment that they currently offer a gas version for. Well, this week, they did release a teaser image of their EQS sedan, which should be roughly the same size as their S-Class. It does look a lot more toned down from the concept that they unveiled last year, the EQS concept, which honestly was very bold, very stylish, and certainly looks like nothing that Mercedes-Benz has on the roads today. So it's not surprising that the fully camouflaged EQS production version doesn't quite look like the concept that we saw. It's not known whether they are going to change the specifications of the car or if a lot of that should stay the same as well. That honestly is what is exciting about the EQS, where their plans are to have an all-wheel drive dual motor platform with a combined 469 horsepower and 560 pound-feet of torque that should do 0 to 60 in less than 4.5 seconds. The size of the battery pack is estimated to be about 100 kilowatt hours, and they had said last year that it should offer 350 kilowatt fast charging, which would recharge 80% of the battery in less than 20 minutes and have a driving range of more than 300 miles. All of these specs put it fairly in competition with the Tesla Model S, which, according to Car and Driver, they estimate that the price would be $96,000, where recently, after Tesla has slashed pricing of its models, now the Model S can be had under $80,000. This is definitely a vehicle that if you're going to compare them side by side, you'd probably end up going with the Model S. But traditional Mercedes buyers would probably not want the Tesla. So this is going to be an excellent alternative to something in that upper end luxury market. Now, there is no exact word on when EQS production will start, but Mercedes had said in a statement that the EQS will eventually be produced at the company's latest facility, which is Factory 56 in Sindelfingen, Germany, alongside the gas-powered S-Class. So all in all, something to look forward to, and definitely a step in the right direction for Mercedes-Benz. Now moving on to CATL, which stands for Contemporary Amperex Technology Limited. They are the world's largest EV battery maker, and they supply, you could say, almost everybody. Not really, but Mercedes-Benz and Daimler, Honda, Toyota, Volkswagen, Volvo, BMW, and actually they just started a 2-year contract with Tesla. So they are huge. They know batteries. They know what they're doing. They, back in March, I believe it was, started talking about this 1,000,000-mile battery. And of course, everybody has been talking about it. And Reuters actually had a report from May that the CATL units were thought to be ones that Tesla has been talking about that they're planning on revealing during their battery investor day. Which, of course, has been delayed because of the coronavirus, because, as I understand it anyway, Tesla wants to do that largely in person, and they're now going to split it with an online segment as well. But, and I got to give credit to Inside EVs, because they really are trying to bring the facts of this 1,000,000-mile battery. And so this week, they put out an article saying that the 1,000,000-mile battery technology that CATL has put together is not the same batteries that they are going to be making in conjunction with Tesla for the Chinese-made Model 3. So I want to make sure I get that clear right out of the gate here, because Tesla is talking about having 1,000,000-mile battery technology. CATL is talking about having 1,000,000-mile battery technology. And while, yes, they are working together in China for the Model 3, they are talking about two separate things, to the best of our knowledge. Now, our understanding of that could change, but Inside EVs actually reached out and spoke with CATL directly, with Elaine Huang of CATL's marketing department. She told Inside EVs that the 1,000,000-mile battery that they're developing is based on their own unique, what they're calling self-healing long life technology. So one way or the other, with or without Tesla involved, and let's just assume for the time frame that Tesla's not involved, this is an absolute battery breakthrough. So I wanted to actually dive into this a little bit, get technical for a second, and talk about how CATL is actually managing to build a battery with this type of lifespan. So if you're familiar with how batteries are made and the components that are involved, you basically have three main parts: the cathode, the anode, and the electrolyte that helps the electrons flow from one to the other. In the cathode, CATL says that they have an application of self-dormant pacification interface technology. Now, what that means is basically the activity of the lithium ions is reduced during storage and then reactivated when the battery is being used. By being able to do that, the side reactions of the cathode are massively reduced during cycles and storage. In the anode, the application of low lithium consumption technology helps reduce the consumption rate of active lithium content when the battery is working, which is critical for satisfying the performance requirements of an ultra-long life. So to translate that to English from battery technical speak, basically it's a way to calm down the reaction of the lithium ions. What happens inside a lithium ion battery over the course of its life is that you have what are called dendrites that form on the battery components, and over the course of the battery's life, these get bigger and bigger, and therefore reducing the effectiveness and lifespan of the battery. So what they are doing is extending the life of the battery by reducing the formation of these dendrites. So I think what's really great about this is that the technology can not only be applied to NMC batteries, but also to the LFP, or the lithium iron phosphate batteries as well. So what this ultimately translates to, by having a battery that's going to last much longer in the car, you now have taken the number one component, the number one piece of an EV that is likely to fail and limit the life of the car, now lasts longer. So if you had a car before that maybe the battery pack needed to be changed in 10 years or so, where at that point it had degraded to about 80% of its original capacity, or 70%. I believe 70% the industry standard of when it's not considered to be not fit for use anymore in the car. So now you can take that car, and instead of 10 years, maybe it'll last 15 years. And honestly, people will keep it longer than that too. I mean, if you have a car, for example, with a 100 kilowatt hour battery, and let's say it generally would take you about 300 miles. Well, over the course of 15 years, if you lose, let's say, 30% of that 300 miles, well, now you're down to 210 miles, which is still really good considering that most daily usage for any vehicle is about 40 to 60 miles. 210 is still enough to take you almost a full week without needing to recharge. So let's say you have a car and it's lasted 15 years and the battery's, you've lost 90 miles of your original range. Well, who cares? Because you can still, so keep the battery another 5 years or another 10. We're now talking about cars that can outlast most people's desire to keep a car. Most people are going to trade it in on whatever the newer model is. I mean, there aren't too many people that are driving 20-year-old cars that they bought 20 years ago. But to that point, additionally, this is going to really transform the used EV market. One of the biggest concerns when buying a used EV is what the capability is of the battery, what's its state of health. Where if you have a battery that's lasting 15 years or so in its normal lifespan, degrading down to that 70%, you could have a car that's 5 years old and buy it and still be very confident that the battery is in good shape. So this builds consumer confidence. This means that cars are going to last longer. it's really a lot more than just the buzzwords of saying, hey, it's a 1,000,000-mile battery. This is something that is absolutely going to revolutionize and transform the EV industry for decades to come. I don't know if you guys could hear that. That's my neighbor with his big block muscle car driving by. I mentioned that in a previous podcast and showed a quick video, but it is rather loud. So I had to pause for that. But yeah, basically, I think this is one of the biggest battery breakthroughs and really EV breakthroughs. And it's not, once again, to recap, it is not directly related to what Tesla is doing with their battery technology. We still have to wait until their battery day to hear about what they're doing. So I think it's all very, very exciting. The state of lithium batteries from really their beginning in the 1970s of being commercially viable to how far they've come since then, it really is very exciting when you look at what is possible over the next 10 to 20 years. This is where we're going to see everything become electrified. I mean, there are a few airplanes and boats that use full battery electric technology. This is where we will see more and more and more of that become adopted. Okay, so next I want to talk about the world's cheapest electric car. This is something that I saw a few different places this week. Jalopnik actually put it out there as a YouTube video where they had unboxed this car that they had ordered online, actually through, I think it was AliExpress or Alibaba or something like that. So if you had to guess how much you would pay to buy the world's cheapest EV, you'd probably think somewhere in the maybe $4,000 to $5,000 range. And you probably would get, honestly, a car that just barely passes the legal requirements to drive on the road. You would not expect it to have any features that are related to comfort or high-tech anything. It would just basically be an EV motor, battery, steering wheel, four wheels, and let's go. Well, I was actually very surprised when I watched this video. One, because of their price, but also because of what they got for that. So Jalopnik's Jason Torchinsky went online and ordered this EV. It's made by a Chinese manufacturer called Changli, and he paid almost $3,000 to buy the car and also have it shipped to his house from China. The car itself actually is offered for $1,200. So this is easily, I mean, I just spent $1,200, well, $1,300 on a new computer. So I could have bought a car instead. Just thinking about that actually kind of blows my mind. But in this video, it is remarkable because this is not just this stripped out version of what a car could be. This is, I mean, it was actually fairly well equipped. It even had a backup camera, for crying out loud. Now, granted, to call it a car is maybe a bit of a stretch. I mean, it does have four wheels and it is enclosed, but it is exceptionally slow and underpowered. I think he said it had 1 horsepower. Which honestly, if you get to a decent hill, you're going to have trouble getting over it. But still, if you wanted to run around the city, I mean, I don't know. You could probably find a used golf cart and accomplish basically the same. But it's neat just to think that there are companies, not only like the Mercedes or Tesla, that are building these $100,000 or $70,000 luxury EVs. There are companies that are working on the opposite end of the spectrum, building something for people that want to, have the bare minimum. All right, so the last bit of news I want to bring you this week is from Electrek, and it's about the Tesla Model Y. Of course, the Model Y is Tesla's latest vehicle offering that they just started rolling off the assembly line at the beginning of the year. And of course, when the coronavirus and everything forced a shutdown of the Fremont factory. Well, everything shut down, but especially the Model Y was significantly impacted. And that is actually coming to light due to a leaked internal email from Elon Musk. Now, of course, Elon is smart enough at this point to realize that any email he sends will most likely be leaked, and the information contained will get out to the rest of us. But he, in that email, did confirm that Tesla is facing some Model Y production issues. Now, they did start production back up last month, but apparently it is expected to take quite a while for them to go back to the pre-shutdown production capacity. In that email, Elon said, quote, "It is extremely important for us to ramp up Model Y production and minimize rectification needs. I want you to know that it really makes a difference to Tesla right now. Model Y, especially GA, is the top priority for both production and manufacturing engineering. It's also the top priority for facility improvements. For those working in GA4, which is the General Assembly Line 4, thank you for bearing with tough conditions. We'll get better fast. I will be walking the line personally every week." So that's actually rather interesting. And I don't know if I were an employee working on the production line, how comfortable I'd feel if the CEO billionaire just suddenly showed up and was watching me work. I think anybody would get rather nervous of that kind of thing. But on the flip side of that, as a CEO, I think it's very important to have a good understanding of what's going on at that level. So for Elon to go personally to check things out, I think is very important. I think it's reasonable to expect that Tesla is going to have problems ramping up production in anything, and not just Tesla. I mean, every company is going to have issues, concerns, challenges when they are trying to do something new or do more of something they're already doing. And to be honest, if it weren't for the fact that coronavirus hit and paused everything, it really was looking like the Model Y was going to be the best example of Tesla launching a new product ever. So while they might be having some problems now, I am fully confident, given their past with dealing with problems, that they will be more than capable of overcoming that and continue on to make the Model Y the number one seller of the Tesla brand. Okay, so that's all for the news this week. I did want to answer an EV question that was submitted by Rajiv Narayan. Thank you, Rajiv, for always being willing to engage. And this question is not for the EV newbie or somebody who's not familiar with electric vehicles, although I will try to make the answer as simple as possible without getting too technical. Rajiv asked, what are the differences between induction motors and permanent magnet motors? And that's an excellent question, and the differences definitely do matter. So I'll try to make this as simple as possible. Permanent magnet motors tend to be more expensive than AC induction motors because of the magnets involved. AC induction motors will generate an electromagnetic field when an electrical current is run through the coils of wire that make up the stator inside the motor. Permanent magnet motors, because they are using magnets, and magnets are made up of rare earth metals, they are more expensive. However, because they do not have the energy draw from creating an electromagnetic field, they are permanent magnet motors are more efficient, and they can be smaller because you don't have these coils. You know, inside a motor, if you want a lot of torque, you have to really add a lot of the length of the wire in the coils. It takes up a lot of space. So permanent magnet motors are smaller and more efficient, and they are starting to be used more and more because of that. You look at almost any motor around you in life, fans or an electric drill or even, yes, electric cars, most of them are going to be AC induction motors because of the low cost. If a company is going to build something at a massive scale, cost is going to be one of the major factors that they take into account. But more and more when it comes to EVs, manufacturers are realizing that to get the range out of the battery to be competitive, they are going to focus on efficiency. They have to focus on efficiency. And so we're seeing more and more permanent magnet motors showing up because of that efficiency and smaller footprint. So I wanted to keep that short, simple, sweet, to the point. Rajiv, if you want or feel that I need to go into further depth or clarification on any of that, feel free. Or if anybody wants to know more, I invite you to reach out to me via email, hello@ev-resource.com, or typically, and I'll be completely honest, Facebook is probably a really good way to ask any questions or to engage with EV Resource. So that is all for this week. I want to thank, as always, all of you who are supporting this show, either by simply listening to it. I encourage you to share it with your friends, other people that you feel are interested in learning about electric vehicles, or simply just staying up to date with the latest EV news. I do want to thank all of the new EV Resource subscribers on Patreon, those of you that signed up to get full access to the EV Resource magazine. Once again, if you haven't heard yet, that is simply $1 a month subscription through Patreon. And in addition to full access of the EV Resource magazine, some of the higher tiers will get you additional benefits. That is all completely voluntary. Of course, I will always produce the podcast for free and make that available to everyone. But if you are interested in supporting the podcast, you can find us on Patreon. That's Patreon. Patreon.com/EV Resource. Oh, and one quick last announcement. The EV Resource podcast has been published on Saturdays at 2 p.m. We are moving that now to Sundays at 2 p.m. To just gain a little bit of flexibility in the schedule. So next week we will start that. It will be released on Sunday at 2 p.m. Before you leave, if you could hit the thumbs up like button on either the video or if you're listening on one of the major podcast platforms. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, I would definitely appreciate giving a review, good, bad, or otherwise, because that will help more people find the EV Resource podcast. Come say hi on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and otherwise, thank you very much for being with me, and I'll catch you all next week.